Hey there, guys, and welcome to another episode of the MH Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Miles Harrison, and today we're going to be going over 3 ways to push progress when you are tired, plus an extra tip if nothing sticks. So, the reason for this episode today was because while I'm in season when it comes to football, a common occurrence that tends to happen is that I don't tend to feel 100% when it comes to my training days. And the likelihood that you'll not be 100% is quite high. Unfortunately, quite a things happen to obviously that's going to fatigue us, whether that's poor sleep, stresses in our internal life, whether that's nutrition, whether that's hydration. There's a load of factors that can play into the readiness that we're going to be feeling when it comes to our training sessions. So, what I want to give you guys today is 3 tips that I use in my training days to help me manage and still make progress. So, let's get straight into this. So, the first thing is, guys, that I want to give you the intent. The aim is to never go light, or should I say, the never aim is to go into a session and go, let's go light for today. And the reason why that is because what we don't want to start doing is when we're starting to be tired and we're not being able to give our maximum output, what we don't want to do is give the body less stimulus to work with. So that means lighter loads, that means slower repetitions. It means that the output that we're not giving is not to our best capacity. Now, this is where these tips come into play because now we're going to find strategies that not only means that you can still have a good workout, but it still helps you to move the needle forward when energy is low. What you just guys need is the right lever. So first of all, how do I define a low energy day? How do I decide on that? So there's quite a quick like little self checklist that I kind of do that make sure that like if yeah, so technically before I kind of like change anything really. And obviously, one, is it sleep? Was it poor or fine? Soreness? Is it global or just one area? Joints or niggles? Any kind of warning signs? Am I mentally fatigued? Or am I actually all right once I get started? Or performance trend? Am I starting to see performance tend to drop in the last few sessions? Once a few of those have been kind of tick, then I start to look to these tips. And the first tip that I give you guys is switch to less loadable exercises. So what I mean by that is I want to be able to reduce the total system load without wasting the session. Less external load can be still very productive if I vary a position, control, or range. So it allows me to let me train harder without the highly cost of recovery. So an example of this would obviously, if for example I'm not being able to do anywhere near the weights that I could do on, for example, like a back squat, I could swap that out for something like a contralateral split squat because obviously it's not going to be that loaded. But the fact that I can do just something like a near unilateral movement with a dumbbell in the opposite side of the leg that I'm working, that can help me bias internal rotation and get me into that position that can help me produce force later on. You can see from there that I'm trading the kilograms for quality. If the pattern gets better and I feel like I've worked but I'm not tired, that's a win. Second tip that I give you guys is switch to a more stable exercise. Stability is a bottleneck when you are tired. You lose coordination and you might not have the same kind of output that you would do if you were fully fresh. So in this case, I give my body more external support. So I can use a dowel, I can use machines. This gives me more of a chance to create a higher output with less global fatigue from balancing and bracing, really. So the intent is still heavy. I'm just giving myself some more support within the setup. So, example again, this will be a bench press into a seated chest press or a chest supported dumbbell press. This has been a bent over row to a machine row or T-bar row with a chest support. By buying output with support, I can give myself crisper reps, consistent paths, and a high quality pump. So that way I can still drive output without obviously losing out on that kind of volume. And the final tip, or the third tip I'm going to give you guys, is reduce the total volume and keep the intensity. Sometimes when I'm a little bit tired, but I know that I need to still get that quality in, I need to make sure that I'm giving the body the stimulus it needs to obviously progress. Or if anything, maintain. So in a way, what I want to do is I want to keep the intensity, I want to keep the load on, whether we're using the bar or the machine, and just reduce the total volume. How much depends on how you actually feel is going to be a positive to your training. So, for example, this could be if I have planned for like 5 sets of 5, that could come set something like a 3 sets of 5 and make sure the quality of reps is high. And just make sure that when I start seeing performance drop, then I'll leave it. So technically, I have a higher ceiling or more reps in reserve than I normally would do when it comes to a normal training day. Some days I might go a little bit closer to fatigue, but in this case of reducing total volume, the moment I start seeing the reps starting to become slow and a little bit kind of like my technique starts to break down, then that's usually when I will stop. And in between those times, I might keep the rest a little bit longer as well to allow myself a little bit more recovery. Or I might actually cut out some of the accessory work that I might have in for that day. So by cutting down the volume and keeping the same weights, fewer quality sets, it allows me to obviously keep the higher intensity that I want without obviously dropping more into that recovery day. And the bonus tip for today, guys, is if nothing sticks, rest or deload. Yes, you probably knew this was coming. I'm a big advocate of making sure that we prioritize recovery as well as obviously training hard in the gym. Could obviously, as much as it's the fun stuff as well, and if we don't have added recovery, we're not going to gain the benefits and we're not going to see any improvements. So when do I choose to, in a way, sack it off or give myself a little bit of a deload? So I choose this when 2 or more similar sessions have become flat in a row. My resting heart rate might rise on a regular scale. I might have poor sleep. I might be irritable. My grip might be weak. Or the bar feels heavy within warm-ups. Or, if anything, niggles start talking to me more on a regular basis. So they're generally when I would choose either a rest day or a deload. And then from there, what can I do if I'm usually going to choose a deload? I don't tendency like to have the traditional deload where you massively cut down volume for a whole week and all that. I tend on obviously based on how I feel. And if it just allows me for maybe a couple of days, or like I mentioned before in previous tips, if I'm able to switch some things out that can reduce the load, but allows me to push things forward, and then later on recover better, then I'll push things again. So it depends on the situation, depends on how tired I am and stuff like that. But then if that's the case, then, and obviously still kind of fatigue, there'll be other things I can go on of as well. I can obviously make sure that I'm like hitting mobility. I can might be going increasing my daily activity to do things like walking. I might do other lower impact type of exercise, like for example, like swimming, or I might double down on the things that may be better when it comes to recovery, sleep, nutrition, hydration, stress management, all these type of things that will allow me to recover better. But the whole thing is, guys, is the goal is not to avoid hard work. The goal is to pick the right hand for today so you can start progress again tomorrow. So make sure that you're always finding a way of making progress. But remember, more doesn't always equal more, but always try to find a way that can help you move things forward. And that's it now, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of the MH Performance Podcast. If you have any questions about anything I said, make sure you drop me a message. if you like this episode, please give us a podcast a 5-star and make sure to share it around. And if you have any other topics that you would like me to kind of cover, make sure you drop me a message again. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the rest of your week, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.